Hello everyone. So today we are going to talk about the next article, which is the this keyword in object oriented programming. So this keyword, now this is the video that you can watch and this is the GitHub codes link. So let's start with the explanation. So this keyword is a fundamental concept in object oriented programming that provides a reference to the current object. So what this keyword is used for, always remember this means referencing to the current object. Its behavior and usage are crucial in Java programming for building robust and maintainable applications. Okay. So now if we briefly describe, so this keyword is a Java built-in reference to the current object within a class's method or constructors. It allows access to the object's properties, methods, and other members. So what is this keyword? If you have to remember that it is a reference to the current object and it provides access to the class properties, like what are the object properties, what are the methods in that class, and other members. So some points, why is this keyword so important? So first point is disambiguation. Disambiguation basically means resolving the ambiguity. So for example, any kind of conflict occurs. So here we are talking about the naming conflict. So disambiguation resolves the naming conflict between the instance variables and the parameters or the local variables. For example, in a function we have some local variables and the variable name matches to the instance variable of the class. So to resolve that ambiguity, we use the this keyword. Next point is chaining. So chaining enables method chaining or constructor chaining, improving code readability and structure. So this means that we can use this keyword to show the property of method or constructor chaining. For example, one method returns the current object. So if this is returned, so we can call the other method using the method chaining. We will see an example also. Third is passing references. So we can also pass the current object as a parameter to the other methods or the functions. Okay. Fourth is basically dynamic binding. Dynamic binding is what happens in polymorphism, I think you might know, which is runtime. At the runtime, you basically decide which function is to be called. So refers to the current object dynamically during the runtime in polymorphic scenarios. So first point is how this works in Java. It is referring to the instance object. So this keyword is crucial when differentiating between the instance variables and the method or the constructor parameters that share the same name. That is important. If they share the same name, we have to resolve the naming ambiguity. So in that case, we use the this keyword. So in such cases, it explicitly refers to the instance variables of the current object and avoid the ambiguity. So this is particularly helpful in constructors and setter methods where the parameters often shadow the instance variables. Okay, so for example, so we have this class person, we have this instance variable, private string name, and the parameter that we are passing, it is also name. So if we do not write this over here and we simply write name equals to name, then it will have an ambiguity and both names will then refer to the this parameter variables and name will be equal to name in all cases, and so to this instance variables no value would be assigned which we are passing from here. Okay, so that would be stored as null. Let me show you, like we can run and check. Suppose I copy this code. I will show you this in IntelliJ. So let's copy this code. I will simply remove this and simply write name equals to name. So if I run it, yes, so we got null. Why we got null? Because we passed the value as Alice over here, but this Alice value was not assigned to our instance variable. Hence, the default value of the variable object string would be null. So we write here this dot name equals to name. So this would work properly and we will be displayed as Alice. So you can see over here. Okay. So yeah, so next is basically constructor chaining. So using the this keyword for constructor chaining allows one constructor to invoke the another constructor within the same class. For example, our class has two constructors, so one constructor can call the another constructor. So this will help us reducing the code duplication and centralize the initialization logic, which will help us eventually to make the code easier to maintain. So if we have only a single entry point, so we have a person constructor over here, we only pass the name. So which constructor will be called? Constructor 1 will be called. Now we are using this we are passing a name and a value, then it will find a new constructor. So it is calling a new constructor which will accept these parameters name and a value for an integer. It will assign these values to the instance variables of the class. Okay, and so for this particular object P, when we call the display function, we will get the output as name equals to Alice and age equals to 0. Okay, so third is basically returning the current object. So this keyword can be used to return the current instance of the class, right? For example, this refers to the current object, and so similarly we can also return that particular object and the instance of the class, because object is the instance of a class, right? So this approach is commonly used in implementing the fluent interfaces where multiple methods are called on the same object in a single statement, right? So we are going to show here how the method chaining is done. For example, we have a class over here, we have a instance variable which is name, right? Okay, so we have this function set name that returns an object of type person, means of type of the same class, right? So because it is returning this and this refers to the current object, and what would be its type? Its type would be person. So this is the function and this is the display function. Now what we can do is, we created one object, we created a person, we initialized the object P and we created the person. Now using P dot we can call the set name. Set name requires the parameter value, so we passed on a name. Now what it will return? It will return as an object, and using that object of the class we can definitely call another function, right? So dot display. So this is known as method chaining. So it is quite readable and efficient, right? We can see that we can in a single line we can easily read it, like how the chaining is being done across the methods, how are they being called in which order. Okay, so like fourth point is passing the current object. So this can be used to pass the current object as a parameter to another method. Very simple. For example, we have a class person over here. We have a function greet. Greet is accepting an object of type of the class which is a person. And we have an introduce. Introduce function, it will call greet with the parameter. Parameter is the current object. So this will help us to pass the current object. So what we are doing is, we created a person over here and we called the introduce method. So it will come on to line 5. So line 5 will call the greet this. This will pass the current object. So greet will call this function. It will come on to line 3. What it will print? It will print hello and person. Now person was an object over here. So since we are doing a string concatenation, Java will internally called person dot to string, right? It will convert it into string and then print it. So we have already overridden that method. So dot to string, we have to print I am a person instance. So what will it be printing? It will print hello I am a person instance. Okay. So now let's talk about advantages and disadvantages of this keyword. So this keyword helps us in enhancing the readability and maintainability. Yeah, so using this keyword we can improve the code clarity by explicitly referring to the current object, which will help us to understand it easily. Now it will enables the constructor and method chaining. We already talked about it. It also helps us in object reference passing. This also we have learned. Now, what are some of the disadvantages? This cannot be used in static methods or contexts, which can be restrictive in certain situations. Yeah, because this is very obvious, right? What static? Static belongs to the class. What happens in a static method or static variable? All of the object like are pointing to that same variable. So, if one object changes the value of a static variable, it changes for others also, right? So static is tied to the class, whereas this is tied to the current object. So that is why this cannot be used in static methods or context. So for example, this is the class example. We have a string message. We have this static function which is display method, and we are trying to print this dot message. Now it will give an error like which one are you trying to print, because we cannot use this in a static context. Now, in a normal method, this message is valid because this refers to the current instance. So here we are calling a static method. We know that we can call a static method directly via class name, and for calling another method, we create an object and then call it. Got it? So explanation, this refers to the current instance of a class. Static methods do not belong to any specific instance. They are associated with the class itself. Since there is no instance in a static context, using this leads to a compilation error. Overuse can reduce clarity. Excessive or unnecessary use of this can also make the code verbose and harder to read, especially when there is no risk of variable shadowing. Okay, so if we do not have very high risk of variable shadowing, we should like always think and use something, even if like we know that this is a good technique. So we should not like blindly apply that everywhere. We should always think and only then use it, because like excessive use of anything is kind of bad only, right? So yeah, thank you.